We often romanticize the colonial era, powdered wigs, elegant letters, and noble ideals. But what if I told you George Washington once slept under a blanket crawling with lice and fleas? Or that early Americans went to blacksmiths, not dentists, when they needed a tooth pulled. They cleaned their ears, nails, and teeth with the same tool. And women? They didn't shave. Some even smeared their skin with arsenic to remove hair. The truth is, colonial America didn't just fight for independence, it fought to survive its own filth. This is the story of a world that looked civilized, but smelled like hell. The colonial era shaped America, but it almost certainly didn't smell pleasant. Hygiene in early America was a strange blend of hard practicality, strict religious belief, and rigid social rank. Dirt could mark you as rude. Unwashed hands might be read as slothful sin. Bathing, laundering, and waste disposal were governed as much by faith and status as by common sense. Today, we'll peel back the curtains on colonial cleanliness, the rituals, the remedies, and the surprising logic behind it. Before we dive in, subscribe to Hidden Feathers. Then do us a favor, drop a comment telling us which corner of early American life you want uncovered next. Your suggestions shape every episode. And share it if you learned something new. Take a deep breath, or maybe don't, because what's coming next is the real stench of colonial America. Captain John Smith, one of Jamestown's founding figures, chronicled life in the New World with vivid honesty and plenty of bugs. His journals crawl with mentions of swarming ants, whining mosquitoes, buzzing flies, and a monstrous creature the Spaniards called the cockroach. Even George Washington wasn't spared. In 1748, while staying in a cabin deep in the Shenandoah Valley, he woke to find his blanket alive with lice and fleas. The future father of the nation quickly learned that sleeping outside by a campfire was far cleaner and far less itchy than sleeping indoors. And then there was missionary George Henry Loskiel, who described a torment he called living ashes, tiny biting insects that seared skin like fire. Native tribes named them for their sting, ashes that breathe. Colonial America may have built a new world, but it was one constantly buzzing, biting, and crawling, a reminder that even the bravest pioneers couldn't escape nature's smallest enemies. In colonial America, the idea of a long, soapy bath was almost unheard of. Full-body bathing, the kind we take for granted today, was considered unnecessary, even strange. Only infants were bathed regularly, and even that wasn't about cleanliness. It was believed that a cold rinse could harden babies, making them stronger against disease. For adults, hygiene meant little more than a quick rinse. Each morning, most people would splash their face and hands with water from a basin, using a sponge or cloth, and that was it. Soap was rarely used, and tubs were small, meant only for partial washes. Those who couldn't afford even that found their version of a bath in a nearby stream or lake during the summer. And when nature called, indoor plumbing was a fantasy. Colonists used outhouses, or, more commonly, a simple pit in the ground. If you couldn't make it outside, there was the chamber pot. Simple, portable, and emptied by tossing its contents out the nearest window. Convenient, yes, until that waste found its way into wells and rivers. Without realizing it, colonists often poisoned their own water, spreading diseases that swept through towns and villages. In a world where soap was a luxury and waste management a guessing game, survival often came down to luck and a strong stomach. When archaeologists unearthed a dozen old privy shafts from a colonial-era tavern site in 2014, they expected to find waste and found history instead. Beneath layers of soil and filth lay bottles, mugs, wig curlers, tanning tools, and locally crafted pottery. These weren't just toilets. They were time capsules, preserving traces of a rough and reckless world. Colonial America wasn't exactly known for its cleanliness. Streets were often packed with garbage, animal waste, and discarded food. Outhouses stood dangerously close to wells and streams, contaminating the very water people drank. The result? Waves of deadly disease. Dysentery, typhoid, and cholera tore through towns, claiming lives faster than war ever could. Even the American Revolution wasn't spared. At Valley Forge in the bitter winter of 1777, more soldiers under George Washington died from disease than from British bullets, felled by filthy water and poor sanitation. Ironically, those same squalid conditions turned on the enemy. In the southern colonies, swarms of fever and infection devastated British troops. In a war for independence, filth became an unseen weapon, killing indiscriminately, shaping the outcome of history itself. Even the brightest minds of the colonial era were stumbling in the dark when it came to hygiene. Science hadn't yet connected filth with disease. Some physicians argued that cleanliness prevented illness, while others swore by strange theories, claiming that natural body oils were essential for health and should never be washed away. With no clear answers from science, people turned to the pulpit. Religion stepped in where medicine fell silent. The Puritans, in particular, believed cleanliness was next to godliness, literally. To them, a clean home, a washed face, and a tidy town were reflections of a pure soul. Water wasn't just for washing dirt, it was for washing sin. But their moral code drew a sharp line. Private bathing was virtuous. Public bathing was corrupt. A shared bathhouse, they warned, was a breeding ground for temptation and, worse, disease. To be clean was to be righteous. To be seen bathing was to invite sin. In a world without germ theory, purity meant more than health. It meant holiness. In the 17th century, keeping your teeth clean was the least of anyone's worries, but toothaches? Those were a daily nightmare. People fought them with whatever nature offered: chamomile, figs, or a stiff drink. When the pain got worse, opium sometimes came to the rescue, a brutal cure for a brutal ache. Dentists were few and far between, so if a tooth had to come out, you'd likely visit your local blacksmith, barber, or apothecary. These were the unofficial tooth pullers of the colonial world, strong arms, not steady hands. And replacing those teeth? That was an art form of its own. Some just shoved the same tooth back into the socket and hoped for the best. Others went for dentures made of wood, ivory, or even metal. And yes, if you were rich enough, you could literally buy someone else's healthy teeth. Poverty had its price. As for George Washington, the legend says wooden teeth, but the truth is wilder. His dentures were a mix of metal, wire, and animal teeth. Painful? Absolutely. They even reshaped his face. But if anything, that just makes him even more legendary. A man who led a revolution with a mouth full of iron and courage. Powdered wigs, the crown of colonial fashion. Whether you were a statesman, merchant, or socialite, your wig wasn't just an accessory, it was your status. Made from a mix of human and animal hair, these elaborate creations turned ordinary heads into symbols of power, elegance, and wealth. But there was a darker reason for this trend. Everyone had them. The solution? Shave your real hair short and hide it under a magnificent wig. Unfortunately, the wigs didn't stay much cleaner. They too became breeding grounds for vermin and required constant care from professionals known as peruke makers. The wealthy sent their wigs for weekly cleanings, a luxury most couldn't afford. These careful treatments involved dusting, combing, perfuming, and powdering them with flour or starch. The result was that iconic white sheen we see in portraits today, a mix of fashion, vanity, and necessity born from an age that was both glamorous and grimy. Boiling the wig to kill lice. Dousing it in fragrances like sassafras, bergamot, and bay leaves, which were believed to have bug-repellent properties. Conversely, the pomade used to style the wigs actually attracted insects, so that the whole thing was a bit of a wiggity-whack. In the 1990s, archaeologists digging through the ruins of the original Jamestown fort unearthed something small, but incredibly telling about colonial hygiene: a silver ear picker. This tiny 17th century tool had a scooper on one end and a pointed pick on the other. It wasn't just for cleaning ears. It doubled as a toothpick, a nail cleaner, and even a general grooming aid. The earwax it removed wasn't just waste either. It was actually repurposed to coat sewing thread when beeswax was scarce. While the poor used what they had, the wealthy, even back then, flaunted their taste for luxury imports. Rich colonists would bring in fragrant European soaps, crafted from oils and perfumes. For everyone else, hygiene was much less glamorous. Most households made their own soap from scratch, a backbreaking and smelly process involving animal fat, ash, and lye. The result was a harsh, corrosive bar strong enough to strip grime from pots, pans, and floors, but far too rough for skin. Laundry day was another nightmare. Water had to be hauled by hand, boiled over fires, and stirred with wooden paddles until the clothes were clean, or at least, less dirty than before. Hauling water, heating it with fire, wringing the clothes out by hand, hanging up items to dry. Using the harsh lye soap didn't make it any easier. In practice, this meant only the items that got the dirtiest, like underwear or diapers, would be washed with any regularity. In colonial America, women didn't shave, not their legs, not their underarms, not even the faint hair on their faces. And honestly, there was no need to. Modesty ruled the age. Heavy gowns, bonnets, and long sleeves meant that no one ever saw enough skin to care. But hygiene standards, and the dangers of shaving, played a part too. A simple cut could lead to infection, and people genuinely believed only trained hands could prevent bloodbaths. Still, vanity found its way in. Women plucked stray hairs or turned to homemade depilatory creams, some so toxic they could burn skin right off. One infamous recipe from the birth of mankind, 1540s, called for a mix of limestone and arsenic. Yes, arsenic. Beauty truly was pain, and sometimes poison. As for how men viewed women's cleanliness, let's just say, not gracefully. Thomas Jefferson himself once lectured his daughter that nothing is so disgusting to our sex as a want of cleanliness and delicacy in yours. Doctors of the time weren't any better. They believed bathing could cure illnesses of the female body, and one Virginia physician, Dr. Thomas Ewell, even argued that women smelled bad on purpose to fend off male advances. His theory? Odor was a natural defense mechanism. So yes, colonial men may have founded a nation, but when it came to understanding women, they were centuries behind.